Pass My Exam podcast. The views and opinions are personal and unrelated to the opinions of my employer, Expedia Group. Please read this disclaimer carefully.
Well, I feel like it was released without really adequate introspection of what effect it would have on society as a whole. I don't know if they really gave enough thought. I'm sure somebody brought it up. Enough thought about what effect it would have on employment.
Yeah.
You know, it's clear that it will. What effect will this have on educational institutes? And you know, the early models that were released, they're better now, but they had a lot of hallucinations, and they would come up with crazy things like, you know, somebody walking across the English Channel, things like that. Things that were nonsensical.
Right.
You know, here's the real danger of misinformation, disinformation, is that if there's so much of it that people don't believe anything, it's like the boy that cried wolf. When there's real information come, nobody will believe it. And so how do you distinguish truth from fiction? I think this is one of the biggest dangers.
Yeah.
Social media, generative AI, all of these.
Absolutely. We have to think about how are these going to affect the economy before we put them out into the world. Is this going to affect jobs and employment levels? Is this going to be replacing restaurants, like food service industries, breakfast joints? And imagine if we had, I just saw a reel where there was a robot cooking breakfast for someone. The go-to-market strategy says that the first person to market is the one that gets the majority of the customers, and that was the case with ChatGPT. It was about putting something out into the world and then iterating and creating a better minimum viable product. And of course, as any MVP, it's going to be perfect. There will be gaps. There were early versions of GPT that thought that the Hubble telescope was discovering the first exoplanets. It was a hallucination. Well, we've kind of moved past that now, and now it's about users, the impact on end users. We can't treat people simply as data points, and have to realize that they do have ownership of their and a right to the information and an understanding of how the information is being used according to. I will include your required reading resources that will talk about data privacy. It started in healthcare with something called the Healthcare Information Privacy Act, Health Insurance Portability and Privacy Act, HIPAA, and then there's GDPR, Global Data Privacy Protection Regulation, that, and then now there's something called DSA, Digital Services Act, Digital Marketing Act, DMA, where these. I think that this should be on the curriculum of every college syllabus for data scientists before you start learning about AI algorithms. And the factors about human labor laws that help to reduce human trafficking and unsafe work environments. Also, the age of things like the minimum wage and the minimum age to be able to work, right? Child labor is like serious, and I'm just going to create a thought experiment, and like imagine if every time that a child signed up for Roblox and had to go through the process of verify that you're human through CAPTCHA, that they were creating labels in a data set that was used for a supervised learning model. Does that count as child labor? We know that supervised learning models need to have labels attached to the data sets. Well, how that's and YouTube now. I'm a YouTube creator, and one of the monetization guidelines is that the content is not designed for children, and that's because children there has to be, if you want to become a paid YouTuber, you have to have a certain number of views, like 10,000 views, 10,000 subscribers. But we all know that kids will change the statistics. From YouTube, kids would watch the same videos on repeat. Thomas the Tank Engine, or Disney Channel TV shows, and those views are almost different than well, it just makes me wonder, this is why we have to have some guidelines about regulation as to who, there needs to be transparency as to who the users are and how their information is being treated. And we can't have a completely anonymous economy. Think about if you have an X graph, a graph on the one end of the graph, on the far left, you have total anonymity of the internet. On the far right graph, you have complete identification. And each platform is going to fall somewhere in that graph. And the y-axis would be the risk level, or the potential to cause societal chaos. And if you have total anonymity, people are using, it's all VPNs. There's no attachment from people. It's basically the Matrix, where Neo is the one person who unplugs from the Matrix. And he understands that basically that's the world where everyone is plugged in. And then the maximum of the x-axis is, when you have more identification, more sources of ID, like facial recognition, biometrics, fingerprints, DNA, your birth certificate, social location, geo-coordinates, and so forth. I was just talking to a colleague about this the other day, and how important it is to always, if you want to remain anonymous, there's certain things that you have to keep hidden. Like, you don't show all of your information to any one platform, and then you don't allow those platforms to share information. Because, if you think of a system of equations where you have a matrix, and you know the pivot columns, and if you know the pivot columns, you can use row reduction to arrive at the same values that are in the matrix. Literally the matrix. Okay, so if you have an overdetermined system where there's more equations than there are unknowns. That's from Linear Algebra 101, and or actually in my videos about regression models, I talk about this for the covariate matrix X, which has the predictors x1, x2, x3. If it has columns that are duplicates, when fitting the coefficients, they have the coefficients come up with the coefficients as 0, and so there's ways around that.